What's up, YouTubers and plant lovers? It's Justin, and today I wanted to show you my Vanda collection, as well as let you know how I take care of these orchids. Now, of course, I wanted to start it off by thanking my Patreon subscribers. If you wanted to support my channel through Patreon, please check the link in the description box below. And also, if you don't have the means to support my channel monetarily, please feel free to share any of my videos with any friends or any other plant lovers out there that you think may benefit from my videos. Now, as I said, I wanted to start off by showing you my collection. I have some red dragons, a lot of Neophanetia falcatas, this giant Vanda orchid right here, and a couple of this is my blue Vanda orchid and my pink one down here. Now, as you can tell, there are several different ways to actually hold a Vanda upright. You can either display them on a wire made for plants that won't rust or get sharp and jagged and actually tear your plant up, or you can put them in one of these little plastic orchid crates and let the roots just kind of dangle free. Now, you can also put them in some kind of media that is soilless, particularly like cocoa coir, Spanish sphagnum moss, bark nuggets. Anything that is not soil will not mess your Vanda orchid up and will actually kind of hold it upright. So I've got this guy in some bark nuggets, and my Neophanetias are in bark nuggets as well, and then this Neophanetia is actually in sphagnum moss. So they can either be dangling free and letting their roots kind of hang, or they can actually be in some kind of soilless media. Now, typically, Vandas are epiphytic, so they do grow on trees in nature or in kind of like little crevices, somewhere where there's not a whole lot of soil, but there is some kind of organic debris that's built up over time. Typically, like I said, they are found in trees with their roots kind of exposed so that they can attract water and get air, a lot of air movement, and suck the nutrients and anything else they need right out of the air or off the tree. Now, Vandas are not for the new growers. I have been growing orchids, especially Vandas, for probably about 6 or 7 years now. I don't know why the Vandas are some of my favorite orchids. Actually, I think I do know why. The Vanda was one of the very first plants that my fiance bought for me, so I think they really do kind of hold a special place in my heart. But as you can tell, they really are pretty unique plants. The way their leaves are pretty unique, and their roots hanging and dangling right there, that's really unique too. So a lot of the aerial roots are there mainly just to kind of like absorb nutrients and water, but they really do create kind of a cascading effect that doesn't just stop at the leaves, but also kind of hangs down where the roots are, and that's pretty cool, I think, too. So since their roots are exposed, as you can guess, they probably do need a ton of water. You should apply water in a copious amount. They don't have any kind of bark nuggets or sphagnum moss usually around them to kind of hold in water. So what they get, they absorb pretty much right away, and they can't really kind of store it to hold off and save for a rainy day or lack thereof. So Vandas are heavy drinkers. They need a good amount of water, but you can overwater them, so make sure you are paying attention to how much water you are giving them. And with as much water as they need even more humidity. They prefer their humidity around 60%, but they thrive when their humidity is about 80%. So as you can guess, a lot of homes nowadays aren't equipped to actually provide that kind of humidity. A lot of people will actually use pebble trays and something that will actually hold water, put pebbles over it, and set it underneath their orchid, and make sure that the orchid's roots aren't touching the water, because if they're left in that water, they'll absorb it and end up getting root rot from that. But you want it to be just below it, so that as the water evaporates, it'll kind of go up through the air and kind of mist your plant. The second best thing you can do is actually get a humidifier, a spray bottle. Humidifier would be your best bet for the Vanda orchid, but if you don't have a humidifier and you don't want to get one, you could get the pebble tray or just kind of give your little orchids a little spray every so often. Now, I say every so often, at least once or twice a day, especially if the temperature is over 100 degrees. You really want to water your Vanda maybe once or twice a day. That is not uncommon. As the heat index goes up, the humidity needs to go up, and the water intake level needs to go up too. Now, that being said, Vandas, depending on what type of Vanda you have, will kind of influence what kind of light you need for that orchid. These guys on the left are the strapped-leaved Vandas. So there are strapped leaves, there's semi-tetrate, and then there's tetrate. Now, I did not buy this one. This was a rescue given to me from one of my friends. He wasn't sure what he got. I don't even know how he got it because this thing is massive. But you can tell a lot of the roots are kind of dying off a little bit. And there is some white kind of powdery stuff up top that I was worried might be from sunburn, but it may be some kind of fungus. So I have tried to isolate him and spray him down every once in a while and make sure that I don't give him a bunch of sunlight. But the ones that have the kind of rounded leaves like these are either semi-tetrate or tetrate, and the tetrates need a lot of light. The strapped leaf ones do not need a whole bunch of light. They kind of like a light, bright shade, indirect light, but the tetrates and semi-tetrates can do a little bit more, and some can actually be acclimated to full sun. But you got to be very careful because, as you can tell on him, up at the top, he's really red, and that indicates that he's gotten way too much sun. So some shade cloth might be beneficial to him, or I might just have to move him again because where I put him first, he really wasn't getting a ton of light, but you can tell his leaves kind of disagree with me because a lot of them are dying back and they are kind of red. So hopefully I can rescue this guy full on and he won't die, but I think it's going to be a very close call with him. Now also, Vandas are very, very, very heavy feeders, and the ones that eat the most and are fed the most are typically the best bloomers. So I feed mine, I usually try to feed mine about once a week with something like a 20-20-20 fertilizer, a well-balanced kind of orchid fertilizer. And if you're going to feed it every week, I would dilute it at least by about half. You don't want to overfeed your Vandas, although they are heavy feeders, but you can end up burning them out through fertilizer salts too. So make sure you're paying attention to that. And as I said, feed them about once a week and dilute it down. And then about every third application, you can get a high phosphorus fertilizer that will help with the blooms. So about every third week, you can go ahead and add about 10, 30, 20 fertilizer, somewhere along that. It's a little bit higher in the phosphorus, and that'll actually help your Vandas to bloom. Now, it is getting closer to fall, so I won't be feeding my Vandas as much as I do during the growing seasons. I'll probably cut it back to about every 2 to 3 or 4 weeks in feeding my Vandas. Now, the humidity needs to stay about the same. Maybe I'll drop it down to about 60%. And watering, instead of watering them every day, in the dormant season, I'll probably water them about once or twice a week. Here in the Kentucky wintertime. So you got to be very careful because it is very overcast in the Kentucky wintertime. But other than that, these guys really are at home when they are in your home as well. Now don't forget, these plants are native to tropical Asia, so they usually are used to about high temperatures. At night, they like their temperatures to be about 60 to 75 degrees, and during the day, they really don't like the temperatures to be up over 95 degrees. So if you do know that your temperature is going to be up in the hundreds, make sure you're checking your Vanda several times. You want to spray it a couple times during the day, and maybe even get the hose out and spray them down to give them a good bath, or take a 5-gallon bucket with this monster and sit him down in a bucket of water to let his roots absorb a bunch of water and hold on to it. And as you can tell, these aerial roots, they come out from all different parts of the orchid. So if you're sitting it down in a bucket of water down to here, all these other aerial roots up higher are going to miss all this water. So make sure you're taking the hose and spraying the entire orchid down. And if you do have them in a bucket, make sure it's up high enough with the water that all these other roots will be able to get some water as well. Roots that don't get a lot of water or go for an extended period of time will die off. And if they do, and they end up dying off so much, they can actually kill your plant. Now really, you want the roots to look kind of green, just like your plant. The whiter or tan or kind of powdery looking roots indicate that the plant hasn't had water here recently. But if you do see a lot of green in the roots, that means that they have been watered here recently, and they can probably take another day without giving them a whole bunch of water. Now, as I said, that they aren't really orchids for the beginner growers, because there are so many things that even advanced growers like me have trouble matching with the orchids. And like I said, the high humidity is one of around 80%. They like a lot of turbulent winds, a lot of like air movement around the roots. They are heavy feeders. You got to remember to feed them at least once a week. High temperatures, and the hotter it is, typically the faster your Vanda will grow. So you don't want it to be below about 55 degrees. And if you expose your Vanda to about 50 degrees or lower for an extended period of time, your Vanda may not flower for up to a year afterwards in response to that cold. Now, as I said, they can withstand a little bit of cold temperatures for a little bit of time, especially if there's not a whole lot of wind. But if you know it's going to be really cold and really windy out, make sure you take your Vanda inside. A lot of places nowadays, when they get them, here in Kentucky, we can summer our orchids outside, but around early fall to winter, they got to come back inside. These plants will not survive a frost, so make sure you do not forget them when the fall weather comes rolling in. Of course, none of my Vandas do have a flower going on right now, but I don't know if you've ever seen the Vanda flowers, but they are gorgeous. They are some of the most stunning flowers in the orchid family. So if you are lucky enough to get your orchid to flower, your Vanda, you are doing something right. But just be warned, because it does take a lot. You need a good amount of fertilizer, orchid fertilizer, humidity, temperature, and all that just to keep your orchid thriving. And at that point, they still might not even flower. Now, I know with a lot of light, I've got mine sitting in a west-facing window, and then a couple of my other smaller ones I have underneath the LED full spectrums. So that being said, the more light, the higher temperatures, the more water and humidity you give your plant, the more they're going to thrive and the more they're going to flower. So I know with my Phalaenopsis, I can just give them an increased amount of light and keep up with the water and humidity, and they pretty much flower at any point in time. The Vandas are just about the same way, but all of their conditions have to be met right, especially with the fertilizers and the humidity and the temperature, and then they will probably go ahead and send up a flower spike. Now you got to be careful, because they do emerge from the leaves and they might look like an aerial root, but you got to be careful not to knock them, because too much movement or stress or a sudden knock can end up causing your Vanda to not flower or stunt the growth or anything like that. So just be very careful not to actually bump yours around. And like mine is hanging right now, when I put him back outside, I've got him in put on one of those fisheye hooks that'll actually hold the hanger for it and not really move it around a whole lot. But like I said, they do like a lot of air movement, especially around the roots. If you leave the roots saturated all the time, they will die or succumb to root rot. So make sure if they are outside that you do have them in an area that they do get a little bit of air movement. You don't want it to where it's going to be battered all the time and banging around, but you do want to have some increased airflow, especially around the roots. Now, I guess one of the last things I wanted to talk to you about the orchids is just the care that you give them. As you can tell, I've really increased the humidity with this one, and the first one right here, my blue one, I just now have started to increase the humidity, but you can tell the lower leaves are starting to drop, and that indicates that it hasn't had the best care for this orchid. Now that was my fault, but I think I'm doing a little bit better on this one because his leaves are standing out more erect, and I think he seems a little bit happier than this guy right here. Now neither of them have any yellow leaves that I can tell as of now, but you got to be careful because pest and disease run amok with Vanda orchids. I mean, you have everything from mealybugs to scale to botrytis to leaf spot, mites. I mean, they've got it all. So you want to look over your orchids at least whenever you water them. Now, you should be watering them every day or every other day. So every day or every other day, you want to check the roots out, check the leaves out, check the, they are monopodial, meaning they have a single stem that they come and branch off of. So you'll want to check the stem out too and make sure you don't really see anything. Because they are very fussy growers, and it does not take a whole lot to kind of mess them up and make them looking just kind of sad. So, but like I said, it was one of the first flowering plants that my fiance bought me, and I really do have a special place in my heart for Vanda orchids. They are beautiful, easy plants to have, and they're so unique. I mean, look at all this with the roots. Most plants, you just have the leaves up top and a couple of flowers, but down below with the orchids, you have the roots that dangle down too. So whenever you're spraying, don't just kind of spray up top, but make sure you soak the bottom of the roots too. Now that being said, a lot of the water will kind of trickle down, but you definitely want to make sure you soak all the roots too, because they will all need it. Now, you can, if the roots get too long, you can take sanitized pruning shears, like I always do, and you always want to sharpen your pruning shears, and then kind of spray them down either with some isopropyl alcohol or hot soap and water and a scrub brush is how I clean mine. But I think it's a little bit easier to actually keep a bottle of isopropyl alcohol on you, and then spray the blades off, and then kind of wipe it off with either a cotton swab or a Kleenex or a towel, and then prune it all up, and then spray it off again and go on to your next plant. Because if you're not cleaning the pruning shears and you cut from one plant onto the other, that new plant that you just cut on is going to have the same disease and the same problems as that other plant that you just had. So always be smart when you're caring for any of your plants, let alone your orchids. Alright guys, well that's pretty much all I wanted to say about the Vanda orchid. While you're at it, please leave me a comment and let me know what's some of your favorite orchids, or even if you've had any kind of success or failures growing your Vanda orchid. Like I said, I'm not trying to scare you off, but they are kind of for the more advanced growers. But telling me that several years ago would have been like, okay, yeah, I'm going to try it out and see if I can do it, and see if I can't just piss you off because you told me I couldn't do it. Well, the first couple ones I got did die, but I think I'm getting a little bit better. They are really hard to actually get planted up in. A lot of people will tell you, oh, it's not hard at all. You just get this guy's going to have to be replanted come springtime. I find that that's the best time to repot your orchids. And with all this root mass right here, it is really unsettling to actually have to go and get this out and put it in a new basket. And actually that's what you don't want to do. You don't want to take it out of this basket right now, but instead you'll kind of just feed some of the roots through the newer, bigger basket, and then eventually they will actually start kind of bobbing and weaving and going through all the slats in the basket. To get it out of one of those other ones, you can either kind of cut it out or just leave them in two kind of baskets. Like I said, and just place it in a larger basket and set that basket and that whole entire plant inside there. Now that being said, I do like this because it's way easier to kind of hang your orchid up on a windowsill or a fish hook or outside on one of those hooks that you can plant either on your balcony or just in the yard too. But as long as you don't have them in bright direct sunlight, they're generally a-okay. Well guys, that's all I really wanted to say about these plants. Until next time, hit the subscribe button or the bell next to it, that way you know anytime I've uploaded a new video. You guys take it easy, have a good one, and don't forget, always plant prudently. Thank you, YouTube.